Hello and a very warm welcome indeed to Quadriga, coming to you from the heart of Berlin. And the focus is on Israel, which is this week celebrating the 70th anniversary of the birth of the Jewish state in 1948. Ceremonies have been taking place in Jerusalem and elsewhere across the country to mark the achievements of the past 7 decades that have made today's Israel a democracy, a military superpower and a technological heavyweight. But for the Palestinians, the emergence of Israel was a catastrophe. Ever since, they've been battling for what they believe is their land, their rights and their future. At least 30 Palestinians have been killed and many more wounded in the latest clashes on the border with Gaza. So our question here on Quadriga this week is Israel at 70, a troubled anniversary? And to discuss that question, I'm joined here in the studio by Ofer Waldman, who's a musician and journalist. He's also head of the German section of the New Israel Fund, which is committed to supporting civil society in Israel and Palestinian rights. Ofer says 70 years of independence, 50 years of occupation, Israel stands at the most crucial crossroads in its history. Also with us is Akram Baker, a Middle East analyst and political consultant. Akram argues that with its ever-increasing right-wing nature, Israel at 70 is accelerating the end of the Zionist experiment. And a warm welcome too to Shani Rozanes, Deutsche Welle's own producer and commentator based here in Berlin. Shani says, only 70 years old, Israel is still a young democracy in formation. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to begin with you, Ofer Waldman. 70 years of Israel. Have you been celebrating?
Well, that's a difficult question. When I was talking to my parents who live in Jerusalem, I could still feel the excitement in their voices. They remember, actually, when Israel was founded. They were there in 1948. So for them, it's still a miracle, the Israeli state. From the other hand, looking at the news we have from Israel these days, the demonstrations in Gaza, the conflict with Iran, I hope that Israel will be able to confront its state in a way that will make sure that we will celebrate in 10, 20 or 70 years ahead again.
You mentioned Jerusalem. You were born in Jerusalem, and I saw that you were quoted as saying that you believe that Jerusalem is a state of mind. I'd like to take that just a little bit further and assume that Israel is a state of mind. Describe that state of mind for us at this point in time.
Well, this quote was made regarding the decision of the American president to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. And it was very controversial in Israel and outside of Israel. And my take was that actually it was a good decision because Jerusalem, as the capital city of Israel, represents Israel. It is a place where you have citizens and then you have hundreds of thousands of people who are not citizens. You have a separation between different groups, between Arabs and Israeli, Jewish Israelis. So in that sense, Jerusalem, Israel is a state of mind, reminding us I would say, the challenges with which Israel is confronted, and actually we too here in Germany.
Shani Rozanes, also an Israeli citizen based here in Germany, working for Deutsche Welle. Israel at 70, what does it mean to you?
Well, you know, there's lots of trouble, there's a lot of challenges, but I want to break the gloom and doom fest I feel we're about to launch here, because it's been 70 years for what was an incredible, miraculous act of statehood. I mean, this is... And if you put this in the context of nation building, 70 years is not a long time. And these challenges that Israel is facing, and some of them are pressing and needs to be solved sooner rather than later, they cannot overshadow everything. We need to still keep in mind, Ofer was talking about his parents remembering how it was when there was no state there. If you put this in context, we bring ourselves back to 1948, to the survivors of the Holocaust, one of the biggest tragedies, most atrocious, parts of human history, coming together and managing to build this state, having made many mistakes as well, but with great determinants and a dream and aspirations. And it's something that, when you think about it, it's hard not to be touched by it.
When you talk about these achievements, what are you most proud of?
Well, the culture part of it, the Hebrew and the culture that surrounds it. And these are the thinkers and the philosophers and the writers and the poets, and also that bring us hope. This is the things that keep us going 70 years on. When we look at what happens in the political sphere on one hand, and maybe some of us are many critical some for. That's one thing. But then, Israel as a society, is a strong society. It has a strong civil society. It has very strong independent press. These independent voices coming from that culture of liberal thinking, of critical thinking, of their own government as well. This is still part of Israel as well, and we need to keep it in mind that that's where the hope lays, you know? This is where we're looking at the next 70 years. This is where we need to hold on to and hope for better.
Shani Rozanes has used the word hope 3, 4, 5, 6 times there in that statement. She's talked about a great feat of state building. What's your take on this?
Well, I just want to hark back to, he says, it's a state of mind. It's been a nightmare if that's a state of mind for us, for Palestinians for the past 70 years. And just to touch on the grandfather of modern Hebrew, Yeshua Leibowitz, was one of the largest proponents of Palestinian statehood and Palestinian rights to exist. Israel it's a Zionist experiment. And if we want to talk about the Holocaust and the horrors of that, the problem is that some of the most violated people in Israel have been the survivors of the Holocaust. Many of those survivors, are very pro-Palestinian and have been against what the state of Israel has done.
This is exactly what I'm saying. We're not
yes,
in odd odds
Israel,
here.
but unfortunately, Israel has continued to use and continues to use the Holocaust as an excuse for its policies, whereas the Holocaust was a crime against Jews, was a crime against also gays and Roma and Sinti and many other people, but it was a crime by Europeans against their own people. It had nothing to do with Palestine and the injustice that was done to Palestinians. The fact is that your miracle was created on our catastrophe. It was created through an injustice. And right now, for me to say, I want the destruction of Israel so I can build a state of Palestine would be nothing but another injustice, which I don't want to happen. But it's your policies, it's the policies of the Israeli government and this transformation of Israeli society into a right-wing, vicious society, which is hastening its own demise.
Before you come back on that, Shani, we've got some images for the viewers, and then I'll come straight back to you after we've had, because the birth of the State of Israel 70 years ago, as we've just seen, came shortly after the end of the Second World War and the Holocaust, the mass murder of European Jews. This shocking chapter of European history still casts a shadow over Israeli society. Never again will we allow ourselves to be made victims, say the Israelis. And the declaration of the State of Israel by David Ben-Gurion in 1948 gave Jews around the world their own homeland. But Israel immediately found itself at war with 5 Arab nations. During the conflict, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled from their homelands in what they called the Nakba, or catastrophe. Shani, 2 groups of people fighting for the same homeland.
Yes, but I think, and I think this is unfortunately the challenge that Israelis have failed to take up on them, right? I mean, in a good way and fix. But I don't think that acknowledging the Palestinian suffering is contradicting the belief that Jews have place in the land of Palestine. And I think both Palestinians and Jews, well, at least the moderate ones, know and understand these 2 people will have to find a way to coexist. And the lack of success is a tragedy. And there's no doubt, if we're looking at who's paying that price of that tragedy, we're in debt. You guys, there's no doubt on who's carrying the burden on his shoulders. But if we look at into the future, then just like you said, no one will benefit from the demise of the State of Israel as a Jewish state. It's about finding a way to make this work for both people somehow.
Can I just interject? I'm sorry, just one thing. I completely object to a Jewish state, just as I object to a Muslim state or a Christian state or a Buddhist state. It cannot. There's no such thing as a democracy in a Jewish state. It cannot be.
You have been looking very thoughtful.
Yeah, well, it is a Middle Eastern discussion, and we live in Germany, so I find both halves of my personality struggling with each other. Well, first of all, I think Israel was founded not only because of the Holocaust. There would have been the State of Israel or a kind of a Zionistic Jewish entity in Palestine with or without the Holocaust. This is important. I think the lesson is much more the thing we have to remember from the Holocaust, especially now that we're moving from remembering the Holocaust as having the Holocaust as a part of the human history, because the last victims and the last perpetrators are dying. is the universalistic lessons it gives us. And I must say, when you speak about Israel is only 70 years old and we have to give it time, we have a basic construction flaw in the heart of this beautiful house called the State of Israel, and this is the failed partnership with Palestinians. David Grossman, the great writer, said a few days ago in the Israel-Palestinian Commemoration Day, he said, Israel will not be a home, bait in Arabic, without the Palestinians having a home and without us being able to cooperate. And when you say Israel has a great culture, it does, and Israel has a critical civil society, well, I can tell you, speaking as head of a New Israel Fund here in Germany, the Israeli civil society, the critical voices within Israel are standing under massive attacks from one side of Israeli politics because, the critic that we say that if this construction flaw that we have at the foundation of our joint home will not be corrected, if we will not find a way to cooperate with the Palestinians, and I disagree, I don't think the Jewish state, you can compare it to a Christian state, but if we won't start to talk to each other, then it's not that in 70 years or in 100 years the state of Israel will be older and wiser and will learn from its mistakes. I believe that if we keep on like this, there will be no state of Israel as we know it today.
Well, yeah,
Now you become German.
I agree. Please, ladies first.
No, I think there's no doubt. I was starting with saying there are challenges. There's many problems, and I don't think we can belittle or diminish any of them and the urgency for solution. But then at the same time, I just refuse to fall into this endless, hopeless, bleak look into the future and thinking it's not going nowhere. There's a difference between the political regime that we see now, and even it feels like it's been there forever and it's going to stay forever, but life and politics is not like that. And there could be a situation in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, things might look better. They might not, but we need to fight. People, the critical voices, the people within the civil society, the journalists need to fight to make sure that the changes are made in the right direction. But I think if you look at the core, there's a lot to work with. There's good people, there's good thoughts on both sides. And I think at this particular day, one day of the year, I want to try and stick to hope.
You really wanted to use there are good people on both sides?
Yeah.
May I just say that I agree with you in that, and with Ofer, that there has to be the solution. The problem is that the Zionist narrative does not allow for the Palestinians' right to exist as a nation. I believe that there will be an end to Israel as a Jewish state, which I hope there will be an end to Israel as a Jewish state, and there will be a real democratic state, call it Israel, call it Palestine, call it whatever you want, where one person has equal rights under the law, that this is a land for all of the people who live there, Jews, Christians, atheists, Muslims, Buddhists, whoever you like, that the state is for its citizens and for the people who live there, not for one religion over another. That's the only way that Israel can continue.
Seems like the hopeless optimist is you, not me.
Let me just come in for a second.
With this vision.
Maybe I have.
Akram, as an outsider, at this time of celebration, jubilation in Israel, the 70th anniversary, a lot of people are talking, outsiders are talking about the achievements that Israel has made. I mean, you're dismissing the very notion already, but people talk about the flourishing economy, people talk about democracy in Israel. Do you dismiss all of this out of hand? And
Yes.
would you say that similar achievements haven't necessarily been made on the Palestinian side because the Israelis have been
There are not
keeping
two
them
sides,
down?
Peter. Peter, there are not two sides. There's not Israel and there's Palestine. Israel is the master. Israel controls everything. They occupy Palestine. Palestine, if anything, is a state of mind. It is not anywhere on a map to be found. It has no controls. Israel controls everything. So let's get that right. The fact that people have been celebrating, of course, these are the enablers. These are the same enablers who have allowed the Israeli economy to flourish with my tax dollars as an American, and Israel lives in a bubble. Take away the American tax dollars, take away all the subsidies, your Israeli economy would not be flourishing so much. And another thing, Gaza, I disagree with your thing. These are not clashes at the border. This was a massacre of nonviolent civilian protesters by Israeli snipers. There were 35 to 40 people killed, murdered, and over 2,000 people wounded with live ammunition. If this had been turned around and Palestinians with guns had shot at Israeli demonstrators 500 yards across the fence, this would have been all over the press, nonstop, day in and day out. But the Western enablers do not do that.
Ofer Waldman.
The thing is like this. First of all, I must say the achievements of the State of Israel in all fields are not Jewish achievements. They're achievements of the State of Israel, which means they're also achievements of our Palestinian brothers and sisters who are citizens of the State of Israel and the Palestinian living under occupation. So, of course, you have discrimination within Israel, but I would not ignore the tremendous, the important part of Palestinian, they are called Arab Israelis, but Palestinian with Israeli citizenship within Israel in this miracle, especially the economical miracle called Israel. And the thing is like this. What happened in Gaza, shooting at unarmed demonstrators, most of them were unarmed demonstrators, I agree with you. And this is the thing, I agree with you. And I think this is, I don't know if, speaking about one man, one voice, speaking about the end of the Jewish state, the end of the Zionistic project, basically the Zionistic project is, what is Zionism? Is it creating a Jewish sovereignty within the Middle East? It succeeded, that's it. So now we're in the next phase. Again, if we look at the thing that brings us together, the fact that we here can sit and speak and say, okay, we have common grounds, we disagree about certain things, the same thing we can do in Israel. If we say we find common grounds, we find a model of citizenship which takes the Jewish part, which takes the Palestinian part, I think this is actually a chance. I wouldn't say the end of the Jewish state, but I would say rethinking sovereignty within Israel and Palestine.
My friend Ofer, there's the key point which I completely disagree with you on, is because we can find common ground and sit here and talk because we're living in Germany. We are all the same under the law.
In Israel.
If I was in Israel, you could come as a soldier and bar me from coming to Tel Aviv by putting a checkpoint outside of my house in Ramallah.
But
I cannot come to your house in Tel Aviv and put a checkpoint in front of your house and prevent you from coming to Jerusalem. That is the difference. The difference is that when we are in Israel or in Palestine, we don't have the same rights. I cannot speak like you.
And on that note, let's just shift the focus for a second and let's talk about ties between Israel and Germany, because we're sitting here in Germany, as we've just noted, talking about what's going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians very far away. There have been real tensions at times in the last year or so between Israel and Germany. Each side has snubbed the other, but now the relationship has, it seems, entered a new phase.
On his first official visit to Israel, new German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas wanted to strike a new tone in the recently strained relations between the two countries. His efforts were well received.
They reach our hearts. They come as I'm learning more and more from your own history.
Maas wants to build trust and bring new impetus to solving old problems.
I think that we are in agreement on nearly all of our objectives. There are indeed differences regarding the road to reaching them, but the place of Germany will always be alongside Israel in all of these questions.
Still, those differing views are not on minor matters. For instance, Germany continues to support a two-state solution, despite Israel's controversial settlement policy. The positions of the two countries here are poles apart. So, how much friction can the German-Israeli friendship tolerate?
So much to talk about, so little time. Shani, is the German government right to cling to the two-state solution?
Well, it's right as much as any other government is right to advocate for any other government to do anything else, in the sense that Germany is in the same line with most of other European nations, and up until recently the US, in regards to what should be the solution to the conflict. Will this make it closer to end? Will this be eventually the solution? It's actually not up to Germany or anyone else. It's up to Palestinians and Israelis. And the two-state solution, I think, is an idea that, on one hand, many can agree is the only way to save Israel. But we have growing voices and growing numbers of people supporting these voices, that maybe that ship has also sailed. Maybe it's too late now and we need to find other solutions, like maybe a one-state solution that is a democratic state that gives... we have within the settlers and within, Palestinians
if that is a route,
supporters of that idea.
If that is a route that the world could go down, is Germany an honest broker that could facilitate in that equation?
I think Germany could be an honest broker, just as the United States could be an honest broker. The problem is that when they say it has to be the two sides who come up with a solution, we are not neutral as Western countries in this equation. The Western countries, the United States, Germany, have given close to unconditional support, militarily, economically, and politically to Israel, while denying this to the Palestinians. So they're not honest brokers. They are not neutral in this equation. If they were, then I think there could be progress.
Ofer.
It's interesting. When Heiko Maas, the new Foreign Minister of Germany, entered office, in his first speech, he said, "The reason I went into politics is Auschwitz." Yeah. And it was quoted all over. And it was given as an example that he's going to have now a different Israel politic than his predecessor, Sigmar Gabriel. But Sigmar Gabriel as well said, "I am in politics because of my father, who was a National Socialist, all the way until he died." So Gabriel grew in the same context. So it just shows you that Germany, in the Israel perspective, can go this way and can go that way. So I don't think there is one German voice regarding Israel. I think, Israel calls itself a liberal democracy, and it is for its citizens and Israel a liberal democracy, not for all of inhabitants. Excuse me?
Mostly Jewish citizens.
Mostly Jewish citizens. Mostly Jewish citizens, but not to all of the people living under the Israeli rule. For instance, the Palestinians living under occupation. And this is the key question: what can Germany do? Because, of course, as Shani said, to get involved in the affairs of another country is difficult. But if Israel calls itself a liberal democracy, and I think that should be the goal of Israel, then okay. Welcome to the club. In order to be a part of this club, you have to observe human rights. You have to observe equality for all citizens. I think it's positive politics that the German government, and not only the German government, can pursue. And excuse me, if it's okay to send submarines, if it's okay to support Israel in other matters, why is it not okay to take part in the regional politics where Israel is a part of in the Middle East?
I do have to say, though, just quickly, I don't think Germany can ever be a neutral broker. I think as much as we see a slight change in German policy towards Israel, a bit more of critical voices that are much more loud today than they used to be in the past. But I don't see how, Germans... Not necessarily because of Israel. I don't see how Germans let themselves be the ones pressuring Israel because of the burden of the past, because of the fear, because of the discourse that we're so used to that is dominated by the Holocaust.
Can I just say very
quickly? Not much time left, yeah.
Very quickly, is that there was no Israel before 1948. The Holocaust, World War II, I don't like World War II being reduced to the Holocaust, as horrible as it was. The entire war was terrible. Nazi Germany was terrible. It was horrid. The fact is that what happened to European Jews, and not the State of Israel. The State of Israel, as far as I know, does not speak for every Jew in this world. No matter what it likes to proclaim, it does not. So criticizing and putting pressure on the State of Israel has nothing to do with being Jewish. That's my point.
I think this is highly important, if I can add, because this touches a wound here in Germany, because very often we speak about Israel and then we move to the discussion regarding anti-Semitism in Germany. It is not the same topic. People who are pro-Israeli, who go with Israeli flags and get into arguments on Berlin streets because of that, that's one thing. People getting attacked because they have a kippah on their head, that's a different thing. And I think it's a point that has to be discussed. It's not, you can't separate both that easily, but we have to bear it in mind when we speak about anti-Semitism in Europe.
In a nutshell, from each of you, where do you want the situation to go next?
I want the situation. I hope that there is an end of this conflict, and that can only be led through by the end of the Israeli occupation of Palestine, and whether that is a one-state solution of democracy where everyone, one man, one vote, one woman, one vote, and a democratic state, or a two-state solution, which in my opinion no longer exists because the settlements have eaten everything.
Shani?
Well, I think the end goal is peace. I think it's such a big word. What does it mean? How do we get there? I don't know. I think it's going to be a much longer process than we think, and I think we don't see any good development, any changes, real changes in the next decade, unfortunately.
Ofer?
Civil partnership. Civil partnership. That's the solution.
OK, thanks so much for your thoughts. Thanks so much for being with us here today on Quadriga. Israel at 70, a troubled anniversary. Thank you. See you next week. Bye-bye. Cheers.